Hey VC, how's it going? Right, okay, so vinyl finds video, just stuff that I picked up throughout the month of January. Yeah, a real mixed bag, I think, you know, a couple of reissues and quite a bit of used stuff, so see what you think. But starting off with this, I'm starting off strong. So this is Gil Scott-Heron with Free Will. I think this is his second studio record from the early 70s, 72, something like that. Yeah, 72. As you can see, originally came out on Flying Dutchman. Now, I say this was reissued just a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, when I first spun this, I realised that I'd never actually heard this album before. I've got a lot of his albums, certainly a lot of his stuff from the 1970s into the 80s, but yeah, I'd never heard this one, and I suppose it's really a record of two halves, I suppose you could say, because the first side is pretty much a full band record. It's that sort of jazz funk sound which you would go on to, I suppose, perfect on the next record, Winter in America. I think that's probably one of his best. But the second side is a bit more, it's a bit more primal, it's a bit more basic. I think it's largely improvised, and it's just basically Gil with a percussionist, with the you know, the percussion sort of punctuating his lyrics and his poetry. There is some jazz flute on there from Brian Jackson as well. But yeah, a really nice record, and as I say, I'd never heard it before, and I really enjoyed that one. Right, another reissue, 200% Dynamite on Soul Jazz Records. Now, this is part of a series of reggae compilations that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I've got all the others. This was the only one that I was missing, so I was pleased that it is reissued. Now, the reason why these compilations are so good, and if you are just getting into reggae, these comps are a perfect place to start, because what they do so well is they mix up different styles of reggae. So you've got the classic stuff such as ska and rocksteady and roots reggae, but then that's also mixed with the likes of digital reggae, the stuff that came out in the 80s and 90s, and all these songs, it's so well put together. They all sit alongside each other perfectly, the different styles. I say they really work. So this is a fantastic compilation, and I'll perhaps play a needle drop from one of the tunes off that. And at the same time as picking up the Soul Jazz comp, the 200% Dynamite, I also picked up this. This is a promo of OutKast Stankonia Records. So this came out, what, about 2001, was it, something like that? So I've been listening to a lot of Andre 3000 recently, because he put out a flute album towards the end of last year, which I've been streaming, which is pretty good actually. I mean, a little bit unexpected, but you know, very good. And that sent me back to Speakerboxxx The Love Below, the OutKast record. Obviously his half of that album is The Love Below, which I think is just a perfect record. It's eccentric, it's quirky, but you know, just totally brilliant. And yeah, I was pleased to find this. I say this was a really good price as well. It was a lot cheaper buying this promo than buying a reissue of the album. So yeah, really cool. But I think many of you all know that. So right, okay. A few weeks ago, I had to go over to Wolverhampton. I was going over to a gig there, so went over there on a Saturday afternoon with my mate, and we got over there and went to a record shop before we went to the gig. So the shop, I think, is called Just For You Records. I've taken some footage, I'll cut that in a moment. But yeah, the main thing that I picked up was this. This is the Blue Nile with their album Hats. I think it originally came out in '89. I've had this album on CD for years. Very rarely see nice original copies on vinyl, and you need a nice copy of it because it's such a quiet album. You know, it needs to be a nice pressing, otherwise you know, the surface noise would get in the way, you know. So, but this is a really nice copy. Got it for a decent price. It was actually on the wall when I walked in, and you'll see it in a bit of video that I took. So it got my attention straight away. But I mean, this album I think is one of the best of the 1980s. it's 10 out of 10 for me. It's a perfect record. Paul Buchanan's vocals are just simply sublime. Now, you know, his vocals at times are almost a whisper, I suppose, but it's still so soulful. And I think it's only 7 tracks. Brilliant record. You know, it's very similar to their debut in style, but I suppose just a bit more of a refined sound. But yeah, if you don't know it, definitely check this one out. But yeah, really pleased to find that on vinyl. And I bought one other record while I was in that shop. This is a 45 by a band called Thunder, Lightning and Rain, and it's a cover of Al Green's Let's Stay Together. Now, I've said before, Let's Stay Together is my favourite song of all time. I don't think it gets any better than Al Green's version of that song. So it's nice to find an instrumental sort of take on it. It's got a bit of wah-wah guitar. I think the guitar's played by Little Beaver, who some of you'll recognise. But yeah, nice enough version, and I'll perhaps put that over the footage of the shop. Just a few cheapies from a local shop. This is Luther Ingram with I've Been Here All the Time. So this is his debut album, but it's about 71, is it? Something like that, on Coco Records. Now this is real Southern soul. I think he's backed on most of this record by the Barcase. Yeah, really nice record, great voice. He's obviously best known for his hit that came out, I think, the following year to this, which was If Loving You Is Wrong, I Don't Wanna Be Right. Great version. Obviously Millie Jackson did it as well. She did a great version. But yeah, I like his voice. And this is a record that I haven't seen about. These records I'm showing here are only sort of £5 or £6 each. So really pleased to find a decent copy of that. This is a nice copy of The Best of Solomon Burke on Atlantic Records. Originally came out, I think, mid-60s. Yeah, 66. I think this is a 70s reissue. But yeah, I mean, Solomon Burke, what a voice. I mean, he's a big man. He had a big voice. And some of the material on here, you know, it's just classic stuff nowadays. Stuff like Gotta Get You Off My Mind, Cry to Me, Everybody Needs Somebody to Love. Songs that everybody would recognise. Yeah, and I say this is a really nice copy. This has actually sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole, because it's made me pull this album out, which came out in the early 2000s. Yeah, 2002 was it? Yeah. And this was sort of a comeback for him. This, I think, was produced by Joe Henry, and it had material written by the likes of Elvis Costello, Bob Dylan, Nick Lowe, Van Morrison. Yeah, really nice record. So that sort of sent me down that rabbit hole there. So that was cool.
When your baby leaves you all alone, and nobody calls you on the phone, don't you feel like a cry? Don't you feel like crying? Well, here I am, honey. Come on, you're crying when you're home.
And one other record from that shop. This is Flying High Together by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Now, this is actually Smokey's last album, with the Miracle. So this came out, I think, 72, obviously on Tamla. Yeah, and this is a great record. I've seen reviews of this, you know, giving it pretty much average reviews, but yeah, I think this is a really good record. A couple of tunes written by Stevie Wonder, which in my book is always a good thing, but also covers of the likes of Betcha by Golly Wow. But there is a killer version of Oh Girl, the tune by the Chi-Lites. It's probably my favourite Chi-Lites tune, actually. But yeah, this is a really good record. I was really impressed by this. Now, the only thing I'd say, though, is that this pressing is a Dynaflex pressing. It's on Tamla, but I think it was pressed at RCA, so it's a Dynaflex pressing. And this is the most Dynaflex record I've ever come across. You could pretty much fold this thing in half, it's that thin, but sounds fine, so I ain't going to complain about that. And just finally, just three more. This is something that I picked up from Music Is the Answer, my local record shop. This is a copy of Original Rockers by Augustus Pablo. A classic dub reggae album. So yeah, so this is, it's not the first pressing, I think it's the second pressing on the Greensleeves label. Now, I saw that John picked this up at a car boot sale, so he probably paid £1 for it, so I don't know. And when he found it, the record wasn't inside the sleeve, which, you know, straight away, you know, gets alarm bells ringing. But it plays fine, sounds bright, sounds loud, but whatever you do, don't put it under a bright light because it'll scare the hell out of you, the marks on this record. But it sounds all right, so I ain't going to complain about that. It's just a cheapie. And just a couple of records that I picked up from a friend. This is the Crusaders with their album The Second Crusade, double album from 1972, I think it is, on ABC. I like the Crusaders. I think they've made some great records, some really, well, just nice jazz records, particularly in the early 70s. As the 70s go on, some of their records can be a bit smooth jazz, which doesn't necessarily do it for me, but this is a great record. It's more on the funk side than jazz. So yeah, I say a double album, very nice. And finally, a record that I already owned, but yeah, this is a really nice copy of it. This is Curtis Mayfield with There's No Place Like America Today. This album is often overlooked. It's mid-70s Curtis, I think came out in 75. But every track on here is strong, you know, so stuff like Billy Jack, which is an absolute banger, So In Love, his version of Hard Times. Yeah, a great record. And I'll do a Needle Drop on one of the tunes from there. So there you go, that's stuff that I picked up throughout the month of January. So, cheers.